Today we're going to talk about the one thing we all know you want to learn more than anything, how to build those muscles fast as could be. So we're going to talk about optimizing muscle growth. We're going to talk about the hypertrophic formula to make sure you're building as fast as possible. We're going to talk about nutrition to make sure you're feeding that growth as best as possible. And we're going to talk about recovery, because recovery really is growth, and we'll get into that a little bit. But when we talk about the hypertrophic formula, what this really is a formula of the most important things that we need to be doing in the gym if we want to maximize growth. So the big thing to start with is mechanical tension. So mechanical tension is the tension that's created by our muscles when we're pushing against a force. So with mechanical tension, what we have the opportunity to do is to stimulate the tissue better by making sure that we have more optimal mechanical tension. So what this could be is taking your muscles through greater ranges of motion. It could be adding more load to the tissue, but more importantly is keeping the right tempo with your lifting to make sure we keep that tension on the muscle we're seeking to grow. There's so many guys in the gym that we've seen who are sitting there and they're moving a lot of weight, but there's not actually a lot of tension on their chest or their legs while they're going through the movement. So there's a massive opportunity to improve upon mechanical tension to make sure that you're just getting the most out of every single rep. Volume is something that we can talk about super deeply, but I'll break it down simply. Volume really is your reps times your sets for the week. And this is how we really figure out whether someone is over or under training. And when we think about what's the optimal volume, the truth is that there's a massive range here. And for different sports, different athletes, and for different situations, it changes dramatically. But the research shows pretty well that 6 to 30 reps is a well enough range for growing muscle significantly. So as long as you're landing somewhere in there, you're going to see success, especially if those reps are effective reps, which we'll get into next. Also, when it comes to volume, we see the best growth stimulus in our own clients, in our own bodybuilders, our own strength athletes, when they stay somewhere between an 8 and a 15 rep range. It doesn't always have to be there, but when it comes to hitting those top sets, those most important workouts of the day, landing somewhere in the failure range between 8 and 15 reps will just create a lot better success when it comes to growth. But effective reps really are the name of the game. It's where the mechanical tension comes in, and it's how we make sure we're actually utilizing that volume correctly. Because we've all seen someone in the gym that's just flailing through a workout, and you can tell that they don't have a lot of tension on the muscle. You can also tell that those reps don't even count. These are usually the type of people who look the same 4 years later. An effective rep is going to be a rep where your form is precise and good. It's going to be good form, but also that your form is replicatable. What your form looks like on your first rep and on your last rep should be the same. That way, over time, as you go through progressive overload, you can still make sure your numbers are moving properly because the form stays the same. Effective reps usually have a little bit slower tempo. We like to have clients train with a 3-3 tempo, and what that means is, let's just say you're doing a bench press. It should take you 3 seconds for that bar to get down to your chest and 3 seconds for it to come back up. And as long as you can keep the right tempo and you can keep the weight on the muscle so you get optimal mechanical tension, and you can keep your form right, we would absolutely consider those to be effective reps. And that's really going to be the bread and butter of the base of hitting the hypertrophic formula properly. But we can get a little bit more advanced. We can talk about RPE. RPE stands for rate of perceived exertion. But really, to simplify it, it really means how hard did you go? How hard did you perceive the difficulty you put into that workout? And this can be rated on a scale of 1 to 20 or a scale of 1 to 10. We usually like to think of it on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being, I couldn't have got another rep if you put a gun to my head. And 1 being, you doing a single curl with a 1-pound dumbbell. There's just no stimulus there. So the big point of RPE in here is that at some points through your workout day, you need to make sure that you're hitting RPE of 10 on at least one set of all of your major lifts that you're trying to grow muscle or strength with. And this could be, for example, having a top set on your bench press. It could be a top set on your squat. And this top set is a set where you hit muscle failure with proper mechanical tension, with an effective rep, and you land in that effective volume of 8 to 15 reps. And if you can do that and hit true gun to your head level, couldn't do more if you asked for failure, you truly would have hit an RPE of 10. And that's going to cause a lot more growth. And this is just another way of us tracking your intensity. Intensity matters so much in the gym. If you are not training intensely at some points during your lift, if you don't feel that tingle of fear because you really took it to that maximal level, level, don't expect to grow at the maximal level. It really is an important part of the physiological changes you're trying to create. That nervous system shock with a high RPE really does stimulate more growth. And then lastly, when we're trying to figure out volume for the week, not volume for an individual set, volume for the week, MRV and MEV are some of our most important things to look at. So MRV stands for maximal recoverable volume, and MEV stands for minimal effective volume. So really simply, when we talk about these, we're talking about the amount of real sets you do in a week, not the junk volume, not the half-assed lifts. We're talking about how many real, genuine to-failure sets are you doing in a week. So minimum effective volume is, if you go below minimum effective volume, you've gone below the minimum that's required to get muscle growth. And if you go above maximal recoverable volume, it means you have so many sets that you've gone beyond your body's ability to recover from that training. So if you go above MRV, less muscle growth. You've just overtrained. If you go below MEV, you're not stimulating enough, so you're not going to cause growth. And what we really want to land at is that perfect range in the middle of these two, which is MAV actually, which is maximal adaptive volume. And what that really looks like for most people is somewhere between 40 and 60 sets a week. 40 and 60 sets might sound like not that very much when you break it down. You're like, that's only 10 real sets a day, maybe 9 real sets a day. But in reality, the truth is if you're taking those sets to an RPE of 10 with effective reps in that proper volume range with real mechanical tension, 9 sets is more than enough to get really, really good growth. And anything more than that, you're probably overtraining. And this is something we see in the gym a lot. We call this junk volume. A lot of guys are in the gym filling their day with junk volume. They're pump training. They're just doing a lot of reps that don't matter. And when you can start hitting this hypertrophic formula properly, you're going to grow so much better. And you're just going to stimulate the tissue so much better. But training is just one thing. I mean, we've all heard it. We know it to be true. There's no question about it. Nutrition is just as important as training. The real relationship here is what's more important, nutrition or training? I still say training, and that's because you could eat all the protein in the world, you could eat your calories perfectly, you could mealtime perfectly, but if you don't stimulate tissue, you'll never grow. Protein doesn't turn into muscle without the stimulus. So we always, always, always have to train properly so we have the stimulus so that we can utilize the nutrition properly for growth. But growth in reality just equals training stimulus plus nutrition recovery. If you are hitting these two right, you will grow. And how do we hit nutrition recovery properly? The first thing is that when we talk about muscle growth, if we're talking about optimization, so really getting it perfect, we need to make sure we're in a calorie surplus. I do believe that you can grow muscle in a calorie deficit, but you really have to be precise, and even then you are going to lower the amount of sheer muscle mass you can grow. If we're talking about optimizing for purely muscle growth, we need to make sure we're in a caloric surplus. A small one, the research is showing that anything above a 500 calorie surplus really doesn't show any more gaining of muscle. You're just adding more fat tissue at that point. So don't be a dirty bulker, don't add too many, but make sure that you're tracking your calories and you're in a calorie surplus. Protein is one of these things that's really in a big debate right now. We do know for a fact that being somewhere between 0.7 and 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass has always been basic science. And I think it's a good rule of thumb. So if you weigh 160 pounds, eat 160 grams of protein a day, and in almost all cases, you're gonna grow as optimal as possible. But some of the new science is showing that there is a 30 to 40% increase in growth if you take that protein up to a 1.3 gram per pound of lean body mass a day. And maybe we'll see some more science come out on this and prove it even more, or maybe we'll see it go away. But at the very least, make sure you're getting 1 gram per pound of lean body mass. Meal timing is another one of these subjects we're seeing new research coming out all the time. A lot of the science is showing that as long as you get your macros in throughout the day, you're going to see success. But the real importance of meal timing is that it's very difficult to get 250 grams of protein in a single meal, and we do like to spike our protein throughout the day, spike our body with carbohydrates throughout the day so that we can assimilate the nutrients better. So some of the best meal timing would just be to simply split up your macros to 4 or 5 meals a day. You'll probably see the most success, and especially trying to put some of those pre and post workout nutrients in the right place. And what this is really going to look like is making sure that we have plenty of carbs going into our body pre-workout and a little bit of protein, and especially post-workout, making sure we're having high glycemic carbohydrates and fast digesting proteins, things like rice and chicken, things like dextrose and protein powder, things that are going to turn into glycogen and refuel our amino acid pool as quickly as possible. And if you can make sure that you time your meals as intelligently as you can, If you get at least 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass, if you can make sure you're in a slight calorie surplus, you are going to perfectly set yourself up for muscle growth. And all of this really is the bread and butter muscle growth. But none of it is going to convert to growth if you don't do one thing precisely, and that's recover. Because recovery is a fancy word, but recovery really means is growth. Recovery is when we're growing. So stop calling them rest days and start calling them growth days, because they really do matter that much. But when we talk about recovery, some of the most important things are obviously going to be sleep. Sleep is when we recover muscle. Sleep is where we build most of our muscle. Sleep is where we release hormones like growth hormone. I think 70% of our testosterone is produced while we're sleeping. So we're really going to set ourselves up for a really optimal hormone profile, but also just for giving our body that rest we need to build muscle. And a lot of that is just because when you're sleeping, your nervous system can finally settle down and allow your body to go through some of those unconscious processes like building muscle. So making sure you're getting somewhere between 7 and 9 even, if you're really trying to grow muscle, hours of sleep a night is going to maximize muscle growth. Stress management is huge. You know, nobody wants to be stressed, but when we're talking about building muscle, you have to understand that stress affects the nervous system very similarly to lifting or anything. So if you're having a massive amount of stress on your plate, if you're increasing cortisol load, if you're doing any of these things, not only are you probably going to throw off hormone balance, are you going to throw off your schedule, are you going to throw off your mood towards all the things we're trying to do here, but you're actually going to add extra stress to your nervous system, which is no different than adding extra junk volume. It's no different than adding extra running or extra taxing activities in general, which are just going to take away from muscle growth in the first place. So make sure that you are meditating or finding peace or relaxing or whatever it takes for you to have less stress in your life. And lastly, it really is a mindset change that we need to see people do more of, is stop saying the word rest day and start saying growth day, because that's what these are. If you aren't having growth days in your week, at least 2 in most cases, you're not growing optimally. There is almost none of you who need to train more than 5 days a week. The best bodybuilders in the world don't need to train more than 5 days a week. And these growth days, those 2 rest days that you spread out through the week, are so crucial for optimizing growth. So make sure that you have an optimal amount of growth days, those rest days through the week. Make sure you control your stress and make sure you sleep a ton. And as long as you hit your nutrition properly and you train your ass off the right way, you will grow more muscle than you know what to do with. And you know we'll have more of these for you soon enough.